Okay, is my screen visible?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So today we are going to talk about our biochemistry practicals, right? So already we have seen some practical portion. So from next we will be seeing. So what we have covered under biochemistry practical, we have covered this. This is our index. How these are test some of the tests which are involved in our biochemistry practicals. Then we saw how spectrophotometer works, working of spectrophotometer, how different color have different wavelengths, and how this based on wavelength and light principle using Lambert-Beer law, how can we determine the optical density absorption of that compound based on basically absorption is directly proportional to concentration multiplied by path length, and this path length we are keeping constant, so absorption should be directly proportional to the concentration, and absorption can be calculated as a negative log of transmitted light divided by incident light. So this equipment we saw how to isolate serum, then estimation of blood glucose we saw, then estimation of total protein, albumin and globulin we saw, then estimation of total serum chloride we saw by titration method. So this practical we are going to discuss the estimation of the creatinine. So creatinine is a non-proteinous substance present in the muscle in form of creatinine phosphate. So this creatinine is stored as a in form of creatinine phosphate in our muscle, and whenever it break down to creatinine with the liberation of energy and inorganic phosphate during the muscle relaxation. So during muscle relaxation, what happens is that it break down to this creatinine phosphate, it break down to creatinine and this inorganic phosphate. Okay, and during this process, energy is being liberated. The creatinine is metabolized to creatinine in the liver and excreted by the renal cells. And normally, creatinine is present in the urine as an index of muscular work. So, as we are measuring the creatinine level, so normally, what should happen? This creatine should get metabolized to creatinine. Okay, so this is a creatine, and this is creatinine. Okay, creatinine. It this conversion happens in the liver, and basically once this conversion happens, that creatinine has to get removed by the renal cell, our kidney cells, and that is how we know the muscle work, how much muscle work as an index of muscle work has happened. So creatinine should usually be present in the urine. So if this creatinine is not normally present in the urine, it means that there is some abnormality in the renal tubules, or kidney is not functioning properly. If creatinine level increases, that also may indicate that it is not being excreted normally. So creatinine is allowed to react in the alkaline media to form the creatinine picrate. So we are taking this creatinine, then alkaline medium, for example NaOH, and then we are allowing these both to react in presence of picrate to form the creatinine picrate, a red yellow complex. Okay, so the picrate is yellow in color, and then in the presence of NaOH, this creatinine is reacting with this picrate. We are getting this reddish color. This is the reddish color, reddish soluble complex form in proportion to the amount of creatinine present, which is measured optometrically at 520. So most of tests last time we discussed that basically we are whenever we are performing quantitative tests, we are interested in the one particular color. Okay, so for example, our intended color here is a red soluble complex color. So this is a red soluble complex color we are interested in, and now that second thing we want in our principle is that that color which is forming in the particular test, it should form because there is a creatinine. So now we have some ingredients which can give red soluble color only when creatinine is present. So creatinine in alkaline medium react with picrate to give the creatinine picrate, and it has a yellow soluble, red soluble color, and this soluble color can be measured photometrically at the 520 nanometer. So this can be measured spectrophotometrically or colorimetrically to know the concentration of the creatinine present. So more the darker the color, it means more the higher creatinine concentration. But that is just qualitatively. But if you want to estimate quantitatively, you have to take the tube, you have to make blank, standard, and taste, and then you have to compare with the standard color for the taste color. If taste color is comparable, so based on that comparison, optical density value of each, if you put in the calculation formula, you should be able to get the concentration of the creatinine. So this is a creatinine. If it is reacting with the ATP, it can give the phosphocreatinine, and if it is again phosphocreatinine, if it is a breaking down, then we are getting creatine, and then ADP is getting converted into the ATP. So basically, this creatinine act as a replace ATP replenisher. So whenever body has a less ATP, this creatinine phosphate it can give the ATP to our body. So this is when we were talking about this one, we were saying that this creatinine is directly related to renal function. So how it is related? So we have, there is a Bowman's capsule here. So this urine is forming here. So here one afferent arteriole is there, efferent arteriole is there. So blood is coming here, from here, and going from here. No tubular reabsorption or secretion of the creatinine occurs. So tubular reabsorption and secretion doesn't occur. So basically, if you this is the glomerular filtration rate, this is urinary creatinine level, plasma creatinine level, plasma creatinine level, and based on this formula, if you can calculate plasma creatinine level multiplied by glomerular filtration rate, it should be equal to amount of the creatinine in the urine multiplied by volume of the urine. So amount of filters should be exactly equal to the amount of excreted. So next test we have is a blood urea nitrogen. So blood urea nitrogen, this urea react directly with the diacetyl monoxamine under strongly acidic condition to give yellow color product. So last test we saw it needs alkaline NaOH, and this urea, if you are estimating urea, this urea has to react with a diacetyl monoxamine and under the strongly acidic condition. So this urea react with this diacetyl monoxamine under acidic condition, and it should give the yellow color product. So that indicates that blood urea nitrogen is present. Again, here in this test, we are interested in the yellow color product formation. So if you are to estimate the blood urea nitrogen, if the more the intense color, then more the reaction. So this yellow color can be further intensified. For this one, the reaction is intensified by the presence of the ferric iron and thiocyanocarbamide. Okay, again we are putting ferric iron and thiocyanocarbamide, which should give red or pink color complex, which is more linear than yellow. Okay, so yellow color also you can measure, but this red or pinkish color is more linear, so we want to change the color. So to change color, we have to intensify the yellow color. So we are adding ferric iron and thiocyanocarbamide to that reaction mixture, and we are getting red or pink color complex formation. And this red and pink color complex formation is a more linear. More linear means if you plot the intensity on the x-axis and the concentration on the y-axis, it should give the linear line. So that is, it means that it should be directly proportional. So that is as red color increases, the concentration, it shows the higher concentration. That what we mean by linearity. So this is the principle of blood urea nitrogen. So how blood urea nitrogen can be estimated. So where this blood urea nitrogen is important. So we have this our urea cycle. This arginine is get arginine can give urea. So basically this ornithine gives the citrulline. This carbon dioxide and ammonia react. Okay, this ammonia is there. It reacts and it is giving carbamide phosphate. Then it will give citrulline. The citrulline will react with aspartate. It will give arganosuccinate, fumarate, and arginate. Arginate can again get fluid into the ornithine and the urea. And this here nitrogen is being removed, and basically this nitrogen is involved. Okay, this nitrogen is involved, this nitrogen is involved. Okay, so basically this is how we should get rid of the this nitrogen. So basically the basic kidney physiology is that whenever we have to check the kidney function, many times we tend to use this blood urea nitrogen, whether this nitrogen is working properly or not. This thing. So this is a blood urea nitrogen estimation. Whether this if this urea is excreted properly here, it means that our blood urea nitrogen is excreted properly. So if you have to check the health of the kidney, so we can estimate the blood urea nitrogen in that case. Okay, so that is the estimation of the blood urea nitrogen. So important for the nitrogen. So basically in this practical we are just concentrating more on the principal aspect, how color is developing and those things. So in detail we will be seeing it again. Okay, so next is the estimation of serum cholesterol. So we have estimation of serum total cholesterol. Next, total cholesterol. So many times you may have heard that cholesterol is associated with the plaques formation in the our blood vessels. So the protein in the serum are precipitated with the ferric chloride and acetic acid reagent. Again, we are interested in the cholesterol estimation. During this principle, we are using ferric chloride and acetic acid reagent to precipitate our protein. So we don't want our protein here because we are not estimating protein. So we are precipitating it. Okay. So we are precipitating it, the ferric chloride with the ferric chloride and the acetic acid reagent. Next, equal volume of the protein filtrate containing cholesterol, a standard and blank are separately treated with the equal volume of the protein filtrate containing cholesterol, standard and blank are separately treated with the H2SO4. So we have to treat this cholesterol with the H2SO4. Then red color cholesterol in the acidic solution with the ferric chloride sulfuric acid is the red spectrophotometrically using 540 nanometer using green filter. So here we want a red color formation. So this red color intensity we want to estimate because it's the cholesterol in the acetic acid solution react with the ferric chloride and sulfuric acid to give this red color. Already we have used the ferric chloride here, acetic acid solution here in the presence of ferric chloride, acetic acid in the acetic acid, and again we are using H2SO4, this H2SO4. So we are getting the red color formation, and this red color formation can be read spectrophotometrically at the 540 nanometer using the green filter. So basically we are interested in the getting the red color, which is formed because of the presence of the cholesterol in our serum, and this red color we can estimate with the help of the spectrophotometer, intensity of red color. Okay. So when we are tracking cholesterol, so this is just a diagram sometimes I have kept because you should understand that what we are studying here. So acetyl CoA and acetyl CoA combined, and we will get HMG CoA synthetase, 3-hydroxymethyl glutaryl CoA, and HMG CoA with the HMG CoA reductase we get mevalonic acid. Then with the further conversion, isopentenyl pyrophosphate, then squalene, then lanosterol, and cholesterol. So basically this cholesterol molecule we are getting is our synthetic pathway. So we will be seeing it in our syllabus during theoretical classes. But this cholesterol, if it is accumulating in our blood vessels, sometimes it blocks the supply of the blood to particular organ, and if that supply is blocked, it means that that organ may undergo the hypoxic condition. So this organ failure may occur, or sometimes if it is a heart is involved, then heart may undergo the cardiac arrest. Okay, so these things can happen. So basically, this cholesterol structure we are talking about. So this is our cholesterol structure. We will be seeing it in our syllabus. Basically, it contains six carbon atom, six atom ring, 3 in number, and 5 atom ring, 1 in number, and then this chain of aliphatic chain we have here. So this is a cholesterol structure. Next, we have bilirubin determination. Sometimes we want to determine the bilirubin. So direct conjugation bilirubin. Conjugated bilirubin couples with diazo reagent to form the isobilirubin. That is a red purple color in acidic medium. So this conjugated bilirubin couples with diazo reagent to form isobilirubin. So bilirubin is combining with this diazo reagent, and we are getting azobilirubin. That is a red purple color in the acidic medium. So directly, if you want to see the conjugated bilirubin, so already we saw that bilirubin can be conjugated or unconjugated. Okay, it can be conjugated with this glucuronic acid, or it cannot be. So based on that, conjugated and unconjugated is there. If you want to see conjugated, it is combining with the diazo reagent, and we are getting azobilirubin and red purple color. And this reddish purple color is forming the acidic medium. If it is unconjugated bilirubin, is diazotized only in the presence of the methanol. So unconjugated bilirubin can combine with this diazo reagent only when there is a methanol present. And the red purple color azobilirubin can form here. Azobilirubin can be produced in the presence of the methanol from direct and the indirect fraction, and total bilirubin concentration can be found. So if you are taking the both reading, the direct and indirect, if you are estimated at the ones, that is the total bilirubin difference. The difference between total and direct bilirubin is the indirect bilirubin result. So basically, this bilirubin, whenever we are talking about the bilirubin, we should know from where what we are talking about. So briefly, I have kept this diagram here to understand you. The basically bilirubin, what is bilirubin is that we all know that we know it continuously oxygen supply for our body, right? So this one is a hemoglobin is here. It this iron combined with the porphyrogens, and we are getting heme and globulin. Here heme and globulin combining, and you are getting hemoglobin. And this is our RBC. RBC carries the oxygen, and this reticular endothelial system. This after its work is done after 120 days around, this RBC hemoglobin get broken down into heme and globulin portion, right? Globin portion, then heme oxygenase, it will combine the it will convert that porphyrin ring into the biliverdin, and this biliverdin reductase will convert it into the bilirubin, and now we have heme precursor, myoglobin, non-hemoglobin heme protein here. Now this albumin bilirubin combines with the albumin present in the blood, and now we get bilirubin albumin complex, and this complex is being taken by the liver as a conjugated bilirubin. So this one is a conjugated bilirubin, and this again travel to in the intestine. So in the intestine, bilirubin can get converted with the microbial activity into the urobilinogen and this stercobilinogen. Basically, the color of the pieces is because of this stercobilin. There's brownish color of the pieces is because of stercobilin, and the yellow color of the urine is mainly because of the urobilinogen. So urobilin after urobilin conversion. So this is a conversion is important, and sometimes people they don't process bilirubin properly, and they will have jaundice. So that is why you can see the yellowish color discoloration of the sclera of eye, or you can see the yellowish coloration of skin, and sometimes in the jaundice. So that is what the disease is, and based on that disease, whether you have jaundice or not, you may undergo for this test bilirubin determination. You can see the direct bilirubin, you can see indirect bilirubin, you can see total bilirubin. And why we are seeing so many bilirubins, direct, indirect, and total? Because this what jaundice can happen. It can have the pre-hepatic origin, means something is some pathway is not working before before hepatic. So there can be hemolysis of the blood, and because of that, RBC is breaking down, and then we are getting a lot of this bilirubin. And sometimes the liver can be defective. So in that case, it can be both hepatic jaundice, and sometimes there can be obstructive jaundice. Means that the bilirubin, it should this is obstructive means this. Here this there can be obstructive in the bile duct. Okay, so bile duct can be not functioning properly, so it can have that. Based on that different location origin, and whether it is a direct bilirubin of fulmination, indirect bilirubin, means whether there is an unconjugated bilirubin or conjugated bilirubin, or both conjugated and conjugated bilirubin increased. Based on that, we can have the different origins. So basically, in your theory syllabus, you have liver function test. Under this one, we are going to discuss it in more detail. This jaundice and all those things. So basically, this test is being used for jaundice and other liver abnormalities. Then next thing you have is the flame photometry. So this one is our flame. This is our flame, and this is our lens. The light is passing through this lens and then to the filter, and then this is a photo detector. Okay, so based on how much light is passed, we can view amplifier and the readout. So based on this one, we can see the amount of the light being determined. And this is a oxidant, fluid gas, mixing chamber, nebulizer, and drain burner. Basically, this flame photometry is this equipment. Here you can suck the sample here from here. So this is a tube, so it will go here, and the flame will be produced here. So you can see the flame from here. If it is a sodium or potassium ion, then it will be broken down, and this flame intensity will vary. So this flame intensity will be detected by this photo detector equipments. Okay. So this sodium and potassium is important for the brain activity, spinal nerve, median nerve. So basically the nervous system. So if you want to maintain the proper depolarization and polarization, you should have the proper balance of the ions. The sodium potassium balance should be proper. So that is why this system we are estimating the sodium and potassium in our this one. So we have, for example, this role of sodium potassium in the nerve action potential. So this is the sodium potassium. So some ion are going out and coming inside. So basically, in the physiology, you may have seen there is a negative charge inside the this membrane and positive outside the membrane. The potassium diffusion can occur, sodium diffusion can occur, and there is also sodium potassium pump where P potassium can be pumped out, and P sodium can pump out, and P potassium can be pumped inside against the concentration gradient. And most of cells, our body energy is being used basically because for this sodium potassium exchange purpose. So that is why we are estimating this sodium and potassium in our laboratory, right, under the practical. Then next is you have is a oral glucose tolerance test. So this one, for example, laboratory test is a glucose estimation already seen. Why oral glucose tolerance test? So the glucose test, for example, Gorpot test, glucose oxidase and peroxidase test, what we saw, it was for the estimation of actual quantity. And this oral glucose tolerance test is actual quantity estimation as well as experimental setup. Okay. So if the patient, one dog comes who has recently eaten carbohydrate diet and his blood glucose is high, and other dog is there who is diabetic and his glucose level is high. So how to differentiate these two dogs? For that purpose, this glucose tolerance test can be useful. So this you are giving the glucose to that dog, and then you are measuring its glucose, whether that glucose level comes down to normal. So if this is a normal dog, its glucose level is coming down here. Okay, it goes up to 150 milligram per deciliter, and it comes down. If it is moderate diabetes, it goes up and it stays up for considerably long period. If it is high, severe diabetes mellitus, then it may go up to the 350 milligram per deciliter, and it will come down slowly. So basically, these are the this is how we can determine this one. So basically, if you have diabetes, your blood glucose level should be very high for very long period. So after 2-3 hours, it should be high. But if you are recently eaten carbohydrate diet, then your blood glucose level can be high or little bit, but it will comes down again, because there is the insulin hormone which will be taking the glucose in again in our body. So it will be helping in that purpose. So that is why we are calculating generally fasting glucose level, and 2 hours after the glucose level we are calculating for normal pre-diabetic and diabetes patient. Okay, so there is a glucose oxidase test is also there. Glucose oxidase and peroxidase we were talking. So how to do this test and what is the principle of the test? Okay, so during glucose oxidase test we are using glucose oxidase and the peroxidase. So this is a glucose oxidase and this is a peroxidase. The glucose can be getting converted into the gluconic acid plus H2O2 with the help of the glucose oxidase. Okay, so with the help of glucose oxidase, we have to break our glucose into the gluconic acid and the hydrogen peroxide, H2O2. Now this hydrogen peroxide, which is formed here, we are taking here hydrogen peroxide, we are reacting it with phenol plus 4-amino antipyrine. Now if you are reacting this H2O2 with phenol and 4-amino antipyrine, with the help of the pyroxidase, this will get converted into the red quinolamine complex. Okay, so we are getting again color, we are getting here red color. And why we are getting that color? That color we are getting because there is a glucose. And why we are using only glucose oxidase and peroxidase? Because the glucose can get converted with the help of the glucose oxidase to the gluconic acid and the hydrogen peroxide. And this hydrogen peroxide again with the can react with phenol and 4-amino antipyrine, and we can get red quinolamine complex. So that is why we are using this reagent, right? Glucose oxidase and the peroxidase. And this reagent can be read at the 505 nanometer. Okay, so at the particular moment only we have to read the color. So for this test, our is a 505 nanometer. So you should always remember, for testing any test, quantitative test, you should look whether it is a 505 nanometer or not for glucose, or for other tests based on that protocol, test protocol, you have to observe what is the nanometer of the light in the spectrophotometer we have to set. Okay, so this is a glucose. So now coming to the equation part, if this is a glucose, for example, we are taking 3 test tube. Okay, this test tube I am taking, this test tube I am taking, and this test tube I am taking. I am calling this as a blank. This is the standard, and this is a test. Okay. So if I am doing this test, I am adding 1 ml of the enzyme reagent here, 1 ml enzyme reagent here, 1 ml enzyme reagent here. Then what we have to treat it with the standard. So here this one is the standard. So I am adding the 10 microliter of the standard here, and in this tube I am adding the 10 microliter of the serum. So basically, what happens is that blank, we don't observe red quinolamine complex because there is no glucose involved. Standard means known concentration of the glucose. We are treating it with the enzyme reagent glucose oxidase and peroxidase. Now we expect there to be formation of the red quinolamine complex, and now red intensity should be there. Here enzyme reagent glucose oxidase and peroxidase is there, and we are treating it the serum. We expect glucose to be there. So here again red quinolamine complex should be present, but the standard color should be fixed intensity, and the serum color can be changed. It can be intense or the lower based on how much glucose you have. So based on that, how much glucose you have, if you want to estimate that one, you have to take the optical density of this. So you want to take optical density of this thing, and this thing. So basically blank, standard, and test optical density you want. If you have those reading, you can estimate the glucose level. So glucose level calculation is that glucose amount of the glucose is equal to optical density of test, means optical density of this thing, okay, minus optical density of this thing test minus optical density of this thing, minus blank, divided by optical density of standard, means this thing, minus optical density of the blank, means this thing, multiplied by 100. Why we are taking 100? Because this is 100 milligram per deciliter is a standard concentration of the glucose. Okay, 100 is a concentration of the glucose. How much glucose concentration can you are taking? Based on that, you can you may vary this factor. But if it is a kit-based test, enzymatic test, usually they will use a premier standard solution. So you have to keep it this 100 as a constant here. So basically, this is the glucose estimation parameter. How to estimate the glucose? If you want to estimate the glucose, you do a particular setup in which you will set up the blank, standard, and the test, and you are going to observe the optical density reading of those, and then you are going to put this in the under this equation, optical density of test minus optical density of blank divided by optical density of standard minus optical density of the blank, and multiply it by the 100, and you will get the glucose reading. So this is a preliminary calculation part. For example, the normal range of glucose can be 70 to the 140 milligram per deciliter. It is higher than that level for different time interval. After 2 hours, after 3 hours, after 5 hours, if it is very high, 200 milligram per deciliter, you may suspect that there will be a diabetes, and you may resort to the treatment part again under the medicine, right? So this is that was the glucose estimation. So next come is a cholesterol estimation is there. So for cholesterol estimation, we have cholesterol esterase and cholesterol peroxidase involved. So we have cholesterol ester, and with the help of the cholesterol esterase, it will get converted into the cholesterol plus free fatty acid, and this cholesterol will react with cholesterol oxidase, and it will give the hydrogen peroxide. Again, this hydrogen peroxide, like a glucose test, it will react with phenol and 4-amino antipyrine, and we can get the red phenamine complex. Again, this is because this is the same complex, we can read it at the 505 nanometer. So basically, this one is a cholesterol estimation test principle. If you are using the enzymatic test, so that is a cholesterol esterase and cholesterol oxidase is involved. Basically, we are leaving this with the esterase. We are removing the free fatty acid from the cholesterol ester, and we are getting cholesterol. We are reacting it with the oxidase, and we are getting hydrogen peroxide, and this hydrogen peroxide we are reacting with the phenol and 4-amino antipyrine, and we are getting red phenamine complex. We can read it at the 505 nanometer. And again, if you are doing the test principle, again you are taking 3 tubes. So 1 tube, 2 tube, 3 tube. So you are taking in the blank, you have to take only enzyme reagent. Under the standard, you have to take 1 ml of the enzyme reagent and 10 microliter of the standard. And under the test, 1 ml of the enzyme reagent and 10 microliter of the serum. If you are incubating it at the 37 degrees Celsius for the 10 minutes, then you can estimate the total cholesterol. So absorption of the test minus absorption of the blank divided by absorption of the standard minus absorption of the blank multiplied by 200. So this 200 will be the 200 milligram deciliter. Why we are taking 200? Because 200 per milligram per deciliter is the known cholesterol concentration we are taking in it. So that is how we can estimate the total cholesterol. So if you want to estimate total cholesterol, you can put the optical density reading of the test minus OD of blank divided by OD of standard minus OD of blank, multiply it by the 200, and you will get the total cholesterol reading. So total cholesterol, for example, normal range is 130 to 250 milligram per deciliter. If it is very higher than that, you may suspect patient may have some plaque formation or those things. So you want to reduce the total cholesterol concentration in that patient. So that is why we are estimating the cholesterol. So here is a normal artery. So blood it should flow freely through this artery, but so blood should flow through it. But if it is atherosclerotic plaque, so this yellow color formation is there. If this plaque is there, then this blood flow will not be normal. It will be hampered. So you can see this. This is a normal. All arteries okay, but here plaque formation. So this you can see the diameter are almost almost half the portion is covered in this one. Okay, so this is a atherosclerosis, and stages of the atherosclerosis can be healthy artery. It can get the thrombus formation. So if you are getting a thrombus in the some of the body locations, then you can have the damage to that particular organ. There can be a plaque formation, flakes ruptures, and blood clots forms. Okay. Okay, some like some viral disease they cause thrombus. For example, this coronavirus sometimes it may cause the clot formation in the body, and that is not good for the body, because if that particular blood vessel supply to that organ get blocked, you will have damage in that organ, right? So likewise, this atherosclerosis, the cholesterol plaque is there, and it is blocking the particular artery or blood vessel, then that is not healthy for our body. Okay. Next is a urea estimation. So if you want to estimate the urea during this test, enzymatic procedure. So already this DAM method is used, diacetyl monoxamine. Next is a enzymatic procedure. So urea is there. You are treating it with the water. In the presence of urease, it will get converted into the 2 molecules of ammonia and 2 molecules of the carbon dioxide. So this ammonia plus salicylate in the presence of nitrocoside, it will give the 2,2-hydroxy indophenol, that is a bluish green color complex, which can be measured at the 578 nanometer. So basically, we are interested in this bluish green color complex formation in this test, and this one is a blank standard test. Again, blank standard test. Under the blank, we are taking urease reagent 1 ml in each blank standard test. Urea standard we are taking in the standard only. Specimen sample we are taking in the test only. You are incubating this test 5 minutes at the 37 degrees Celsius for 10 minutes at the room temperature, and then we are adding color reagent 1 ml to each, and then we are observing this color because we have now this urease breaking the urea into ammonia. Carbon dioxide, ammonia is reacting with the salicylate, and with the nitrocoside, it is getting 2,2-hydroxy indophenol. Indophenol is this 2,2 hydroxy indophenol has a bluish green color, and this bluish green color we can measure in this test. Okay, so basically this urine contains many reagents: 0.05% ammonia, sulfate, phosphate, chlorine, magnesium, calcium, potassium, sodium, creatinine, uric acid, urea, water. So many reagents we contain. So under the biochemistry laboratory, we are estimating many of these reagents analytes, right? So next is albumin estimation. So this albumin, in the presence of bromocresol green, it combines with it, and at the pH 4, it will give the green color complex formation. And this green color complex formation, we can estimate here with this one. This BC blank standard and test we are taking. Under the BCG reagent, we are adding 100 microliter of the 1000 microliter. 1000 microliter means 1 ml. 1 ml of the BCG reagent in each of this one. Under the standard, that is albumin standard, we are adding in the standard. Serum we are adding in the test, and distilled water 2010 microliter we are adding in each of the tube. Then if you want to estimate this globulin, we can estimate by total proton minus albumin, or albumin globulinaceous albumin divided by globulin. So basically here we are estimating albumin. So albumin is equal to absorption of the test minus absorption of blank divided by absorption of standard minus absorption of the blank multiplied by albumin concentration. So if it is a 5 gram per deciliter, we are taking 5 here. Okay, so albumin standard concentration here it is a 3.5 microgram gram per deciliter. So that is how we estimate the albumin. So this green color complex we can concentrate. Green color complex intensity we can see if you are reacting albumin with this bromocresol green at the pH 4. Next we have is the total protein. So if we are estimating the peptide bond, so this peptide bond is reacting with this copper ion, and we are getting the violet color complex formation in the alkaline medium. So whenever we are estimating the protein, we know that protein contains the peptide bond, and if it is reacting with this copper ion in the presence of alkaline medium, it will give the violet complex. This knowledge we can utilize for our test. So this protein, we have many protein in our body, like immunoglobulin, transferrin, fibrinogen, microglobulin, antitrypsin, haptoglobin, glycoprotein, apolipoprotein. So these are the many proteins we have. This albumin we have. And how to do the test? We have blank, standard, and test. Under the each of the test, we are adding biuret reagent, 1 ml each in each. And for the standard, we are taking 1 ml of the biuret reagent, and we are adding the 20 microliter of the standard in it. For the test solution, we are taking the 1 ml of the biuret reagent, and we are adding 20 microliter of the serum in it. Then we have to incubate. So some tests require the incubation. So this test required, we have 37 degrees Celsius for 5 minutes, and then we have to read it at the 555 nanometer using the green filter. Okay, so this will give albumin concentration, optical density of test minus optical density of blank divided by optical density of standard minus optical density of blank multiplied by the standard concentration. Here we are using 5.5 gram per deciliter. So here you can put 5.5 gram. Okay, 5.5 you can put, and it will, if you are taking the reading of this blank, standard, and test, then you can calculate the albumin concentration likewise. So next text we have is a SGOT and AST or SGOT, aspartate transaminase. Here aspartate. Here is aspartate. We are treating it with the alpha glutarate in the presence of AST. It will give oxaloacetate and L-glutamate, and this oxaloacetate will come here. In next reaction, oxaloacetate plus NADH in the presence of malate dehydrogenase, it will give malate and dehydrogenase. And this reaction is being read at the 340 nanometer. Basically, this one is read under the UV light, so 340 nanometer. So this is UV based derivation how the light intensity changes. So this is an enzymatic reagent, substrate reagent, enzymatic reagent 1 ml you are taking, substrate reagent 100 microliter, and this sample you can take the 100 microliter of the sample, or you can take the 100 microliter of the standard solution. Mix and incubate at 37 degrees Celsius for 60 minutes, and then measure the change in optical density during 3 minutes. So basically, this one is a AST is somewhat different principle. You are, instead of this one, you are measuring its intensity change at the different minutes. Okay, so initial optical density and optical density after 3 minutes, and this difference of optical density per minute we can calculate and multiply by 1905, and we can get the normal value. If it is normal serum, 5 to 40 international units per liter. And these are the aspartate aminotransferase. So basically, this one is used if you have some liver damage. So this one is a healthy liver. This is a fatty liver. So deposit of fat can lead to the liver enlargement. If it is a liver coverage scar formation, can be there. Growth of the connective tissue can destroy the cell. Cirrhosis. If somebody is drinking too much alcohol, then he may have the liver cirrhosis. So if you want to detect that liver damages, you can do the aspartate aminotransferase test. So this is a SGOT test. Glutamate in the presence of oxaloacetate, it will get converted into alpha-ketoglutarate and the aspartate here. Next test we have is a ALT or AGPT. The L-alanine will combine with alpha-ketoglutarate, and it will give pyruvate and L-glutamine in the alanine transaminase with the help of alanine transaminase. So this ALT, AST, this enzyme we will be seeing in our theory. So this is ALT, which is helping the alanine to get converted into pyruvate, and this pyruvate will combine with NADH in the presence of LDH, and we will get the lactate plus NADH, and it will be read at the 340 nanometer. So this is alanine plus aspartate. Actually, this reaction, alanine oxaloacetate reacting, pyruvate forming. So this pyruvate formation is there, glutamate is there. So ALT or AGPT, serum glutamate pyruvate transaminase, catalyzes the transfer of amino group from alanine to oxaloacetate. So this amino group is being transferred to this oxaloglutarate, and then there is a formation of the glutamate and the pyruvate is there. And this is a reaction setup. Reagent required is enzyme reagent is there 1 ml. In the substrate reagent 100 microliter, sample 100 microliter. If you are mixing and incubating at the 37 degrees Celsius for 60 minutes, and if you are measuring change in optical density during 3 minutes, you can see optical density change per minute multiplied by 1905. Normal value can be 5 to 40 iterations per liter. So for again for liver damage or for liver damage, this can be used. So liver fibrosis, fatty liver, and cirrhosis. So this is basically how to use the tubes, how to use the pipette. So whenever you are using pipette, these are the parts of pipette. There is a plunger, tip ejector is there, volume adjustment knob is there, micrometer is there, volume indicator you can see on the our pipette. There is a body, plastic body can be plastic, tip ejector is there. This is a tip ejector. This is sharp tip disposable polypropylene. So these are the parts of our pipette, micropipette. So again, there is an effect of pH on enzyme activity, increasing enzyme activity. So particular enzyme activity at particular enzyme activity, it will be the higher at the particular pH. So at pH 8, this enzyme activity is higher. We call it as a optimal pH. So each enzyme can have optimal different optimal pH. Pepsin can have at 1.2 or something. Several amylase can have optimal pH at 6. Alkaline phosphatase can have optimal pH at the 7. Effect of the temperature on the enzyme activity. So enzyme also work at particular temperature. So here optimal temperature of human is at 37. So enzyme like to work. Our enzymes like to work at the 37. So heat energy causes more collision between enzyme and substrate. That is why more optimal enzyme activity. But if temperature is higher than required, like 60 degree, then it cause the enzyme denaturation and then reaction rate will fall. So this one is a paper chromatography. We have lead here, paper here, and we are solvent front and solvent we are putting here. We are applying our reagents here, and it should travel upstream. So solvent front you can observe here. So electrophoresis, protein electrophoresis also there. Likewise, protein sample you can load here in this polyacrylamide gel. Will travel down here on SDS way, sodium rhodyl sulfate, polyacrylamide gel, and you can observe the band of the protein. So actually, in our laboratory, you can observe the protein bands also. So these are the some of the reference value we have put. Like whenever we see biochemistry test, you can see this cholesterol, triglycerol, blood urea nitrogen, LDH, CPK. Likewise, value you can see in the male and female may be slight difference. So under our laboratory, you should remember that there are some laboratory safety protocols. So you should don't touch the animal. So like in clinic without supervision, you shouldn't touch it. But and if it is experimental laboratory setup, then also. So wear safety goggle is wearing safety goggle is important because some acid and these things can spill and it may cause the damage to our eyes. We have to wear the lab coat. Also, we have to eat. You have to wear the boots to avoid the chemical spillage on your legs and this thing. Wear gloves whenever necessary. Don't eat at your workstation. Clean your workspace. Okay, so you shouldn't eat anything in your laboratory because it may surface may contain anything. Previously, student may have worked, so you shouldn't eat anything in your laboratory, right? And you next thing is that. You have to do the cleanup after experiment. So thank you. So that was about the laboratory practicals, our laboratory practicals, right?